Winding halls of where and when stars explode again and again. He's a rogue in the threads of fate, chasing shadows too long, too late. Mirror fragments all around, each new realm, new battleground. A mage's curse or bounty's chase, fury's fire in every space.
That is not what we're looking for. Okay, we're gonna change this. I'm gonna figure this out. Give me just a sec. The fuck? This one? Yeah, that's the one we want. There we go. Okay. So, bit of a switch today. Uh, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite groups. For those who don't know, I'm a massive, massive DC Comics fan. And I'll actually be uploading this to my other channel at one point. But for now, we'll do it here. But we're going to talk about some of my favorite people in the DC universe, the Bat Family, as shown here. Of course, this is the Bat Family in the early 2000s. We don't want them though. Let's see. They're great. Don't get me wrong. Love that Bat Family. You know, Superman, Batman's best friend. This is the current Bat Family, and the photo really has cut a couple of people out of it, and I'll address them shortly. And there's Ace the Bat Hound. Ace is always good to have, but there are a couple of animals missing from it, and we'll go into them as well. Um, Give me just a minute. I'm doing about 3 or 4 different things right now, so give me just a moment. Uh, yeah, just taking care of a couple of things real quick. Bum 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 bum. Ah, there he is, my buddy Salty. And I forgot to do a couple of things earlier, so I'm fixing them right now. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, there. Right. So, DC Comics, superheroes, my kind of thing. Like I said, for anyone who doesn't know, I am a huge, massive DC Comics fan. Um, the Bat Family, Nightwing in particular, being my favorite characters. Um, I here's the thing. I have many different. I have a unique way of viewing at comics. I have favorite characters, but then I have my favorite heroes. Dick Grayson, Nightwing, is one of my favorite characters, and I think I have an echo. Echo. Yeah, I do. Give me a sec. Let me fix that. Why is it echoing? Shouldn't be echoing. Settings. Audio. There. That better? Nope. Nope. That's not right. Don't know what's going on, but I've got an echo I'm trying to fix real quick. Hello? Testing? Woohoo! Alright, well, we're not gonna worry about it right now. Okay. DC Comics characters. Batman, Superman, all of them. Love. I am more of a DC fan than I am a Marvel, even though my nickname comes from one of Marvel's biggest badasses, Nick Fury. Ooh, that is bad. That's real bad. I've got a hell of an echo. Why do I have an echo? See if we can get rid of this echo. There. Hello? Oh, it's still there. That is really weird because I just turned off my USB. That is particularly weird. It's very weird. Okay, let's try this. Okay, that better? Yes. Okay, good. Got rid of that. Sorted that out. At least for now. Sorry, it's been a day. It has been a day. But we're going to talk about DC Comics characters today. And specifically, some of my favorite ones. There we are. Well, that's wrong. That didn't work the way I planned it. Alright, minimize that for now. Minimize the... Don't need this for right now. So, of course, the head of the Bat family is, of course, Batman himself. And, I'm going to see if there's a better way for me to do this, because that is terrible. Alright, no, I don't want that one. Ah, this. Now, that photo's better. Yes. Much better. And you'll just have to forgive everything. I'm still figuring out how to do certain things, so bear with me, okay? Please bear with me. Let's talk about DC Comics and the Bat family. Hey, Salt, we are discussing DC Comics, specifically the Bat family. Something I'm somewhat of an expert on, I like to think. More so on Nightwing and Batman than some of the other members of the family. But before we do anything else, we're going to go through and identify each member of the family. So, of course, we have Batman himself, Bruce Wayne. We have Dick Grayson, Nightwing, who is also the original Robin. Funnily enough, Bruce and Dick are two of the oldest characters in DC Comics. Batman came out in 1938 or 39. I want to say it's 39. And the original Robin, Dick Grayson, appeared for the first time in 1940. His, I'm sure of. Selena Kyle is Catwoman, and Bruce's on again, off again love interest. One of my favorite people, actually, for Batman's significant others. And she is actually every bit as I was double checking myself. I thought she was, but she's every bit as old as Nightwing. They premiered as Dick Grayson here. They premiered in the same year. That's incredible. It really is. That should give you an idea of just how old some of these characters are, because they are old characters. These are not, everyone's like, oh, Batman's, a lot of people are big on Marvel, and I get Marvel's freaking awesome. It is. I love Marvel. But Marvel's the new kid on the block, and most people don't realize this. The original superhero comic book company is DC, because the first ever superhero is Superman. The second ever superhero is Batman. That's why their first appearance comic books are the two most expensive in the world. I want to say the most recent sale of first appearance of Superman was like 2.5 million. I'm going to double check that now. Most recent sale. Action Comics #1. Right. Okay. I'm sorry. My information is out of date. It's really out of date. Holy shit, am I out of date? Superman's first issue, Action Comics #1 in 8.5, which is very nice quality comic. I mean, I didn't know they had any 8.5 issues of Action Comics in the world, but apparently there is. But Action Comics #1, 8.5, sold last year in 2024 for $6 million. Take about 0.5 to 1 million off of that, and probably you'd have about the same for Detective Comics 27, which is the first appearance of Batman. I mean, these guys are the origin of superheroes. In fact, you know what? Instead of just focusing on the Bat family, we're going to talk about DC Comics in general, because it is really. I mean, there are people who are complete and utter assholes involved with every comic book company. I mean, God rest his soul, Stan Lee, but that man would take credit for anything you let him, and he even admitted that. That's actually why Jack Kirby leaves Marvel. That's probably, well, depending on who you believe. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't, but some people say that one of the reasons Jack Kirby leaves Marvel is Stan, because Stan's taken all the credit for all these characters they created together. Another thing is, Marvel is screwing them on the profits, and I'll believe that one too. I'm actually more likely to believe the screwing them on the profits bit. But I've heard both. But and then you've got Bob Kane and Bill Finger, the guys who create Batman. And I won't even go into that mess because here's the thing. Bob Kane was like, "Oh yeah, I created Batman. I did this. I did that." But he was the co-creator of Batman, co-creator of Dick Grayson Robin, co-creator of Joker, co-creator of Catwoman, Two-Face, Penguin, two of the Clayfaces, Riddler, Green, the Alan Scott Green Lantern, Wildcat Ted Grant, and Batgirl Betty Kane. Holy shit. That is kind of ridiculous. And wow. Okay, what did Bob Kane do? Let's just out of curiosity. His list of creations is far less than Bill Finger's. Okay, so you know what? Screw Bob Kane. Fuck that guy. Yeah, okay. But we were talking. So the fact of the matter is, if you were to list the most popular superheroes for DC Comics and Marvel Comics, you would end up with, on Marvel's side of things, most of theirs are Silver Age. Most of theirs Silver Age. Um, Silver Age being what 1960s to 1970s or something like that. They actually have it properly defined. Let me double check myself there. Most of them are in the 1960s, but the official time period is 1956 to 1970. Okay, there we go. So, 1938, Superman to 1956, that's all Golden Age. Then you get the Silver Age, which is 1956 to 1970, followed by the Bronze Age, which is 1970 to 1985, to current age. That's what they call our comics now. We're the current age of comics, and that's 1970 to 1985. Just 1 year before I was born. That's weird. Okay, cool. But, moving on. If you were to list, like, DC's most popular heroes, and in all honesty, I wish we had more people in the chat. Yeah, that is. But if you're like to list most of DC Comics characters, like their most, Salt, you're here, so go ahead and give me a DC Comics character, anyone, other than Batman and Superman. Joker. Joker is Golden Age. He is one of the, outside of the mob, which, by the way, the original Batman villains are not costumed villains. They are the mob. He's the Falcone, the Marconis, all of them. Those are his first really kind of bad guys, are the mob. But if you're looking at Joker, okay, Joker. Excellent supervillain. Great supervillain. Right, Joker. Joker came about, and I wish to God I was joking here. All right, Batman gets his own first book in 1940, about a year to 2 years after he's created. I think 2 years. I think that's a year actually. Let me double check. If I'm remembering correctly. Batman himself first appears 1939. So yeah, a year after being created, Batman gets his own book. The first villain in Batman #1 is the Joker. This is 1940. Joker is a Golden Age villain. He is, in fact, pretty much all of Batman's villains are Golden Age. No problem, Salt. I know you're streaming. I was not in a mood to game tonight, so I figured I would talk comic books, because God, I can talk comics for a long time. But yeah, Joker. 1940. Think about that. These characters have been around for nearly 100 years. I mean, we are in 2025, more than halfway through 2025. Batman came out in 1939. We are less than 14 years away from his 100th anniversary. We're less than 12 years away from Superman's. We're 12 years away from Superman's. I mean, these. Whereas if you were to list like a Marvel character outside of Captain America, Salt, if you're still here, give me a Marvel character, please. He's probably busy with his own stream, which is understandable. I don't know what Salt's streaming tonight. I should probably look into that, actually. But he is Squirrel Girl. Okay, Squirrel Girl. Okay, Doreen Green, who is actually, believe it or not, one of my favorite Marvel characters. I love Squirrel Girl. She is a really cool Marvel character, but I can't remember when she was created, so we're gonna look that up real quick. Squirrel Girl, Doreen Green. Doreen Green wasn't created. Marvel Superheroes. There she is. Earth 616. Doreen Green. Doreen Green is from 1991. That's the first appearance of the Squirrel Girl. That's how new she is, according to this. I'm not sure about that. Let me double check that. That can't be right. I thought she was at least an 80s character. Really? Yeah. Winter 1991, Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Number 8. Holy shit. She is a 90s character. Damn. I thought she was older than that. But if we're going to go like with one of the really popular heroes for pulling out of my ass, Iron Man. Let's be blunt. We all love Iron Man. We all love Tony. Even if the Tony we get on screen is a little different from the Tony we get in the comics, we all love Tony. Tony's awesome. Right. Tony Stark. The Invincible Iron Man. 1960. I want to say 1963, if I'm remembering correctly. 1962. Tales of Suspense number 39. Okay, I was a year off. Sorry. But yeah, Iron Man. 1962. Batman is over 20 years older than him. Hawkeye is also a 60s character. Well, if we want to talk like the popular Golden Age heroes for Marvel, let's say Captain America, because he's 1940s. Yeah. Captain America's the 1940s. You know what? I'll give you Bucky Barnes, since he becomes the Winter Soldier and is very popular today. I'll give you Bucky Barnes because he's Cap's sidekick. He's Cap's teenage sidekick. in the 1940s. There's Namor, the Submariner. He's Golden Age. And you know what? I'll even be very, very nice and give you Vision. Because Vision's body is that body of the Synthoid Man, who was also known as the original Human Torch, not Johnny Storm. There was a Human Torch before Johnny Storm, and that was the Synthoid Man, who was a member of the Invaders, which was actually Captain America's World War II team. The Howling Commandos were actually Nick Fury Sr.'s World War II team. So, let's get that out. But if you were to name off like the really big Marvel heroes outside of them, nearly all of them are Silver Age. They're at least over 20 years younger than most of DC's characters. I can prove this. I can actually prove this. It's scary how much of this I can prove. Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Catwoman. They're all Golden Age, and that's just villains. Batman, obviously. Nightwing, because Dick Grayson is the original Robin, who grows up to be Nightwing, and he was 1940. So, let me pull this up. I actually had a list here. Now look it back up. I forgot to save it, so forgive me. We're just going to do their Golden Age heroes. And we're going to go to DC Fandom, which is great, which is the best one for these. These are just Golden Age characters. And I'm just going to hit the top ones, okay? I'm going to hit the big names here. And I'm going to use the hero names because in DC, I don't think so. I think she's Silver. I'll have to double check. Poison Ivy. If I remember, she is 1960s. If I'm remembering correctly. 1966, yeah? Batman 181. Poison Ivy is a Silver Age character. But yeah, if you... Ooh, that's a lot. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and God, this is a huge list. It really is. It's a massive, massive list. And like I said, we're just going to use the hero names. So we have Batman, Catwoman, Nightwing, Superman, Black Canary, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman. Like I said, I'm just naming them off the top of my pulling Dr. Fate, Adam, Hawkman. God, there's a lot more. Lot more. Captain Marvel, who we know today is Shazam. God, who else am I thinking of? Like I said, the list is massive for DC's Golden Age. I believe Hawkgirl's on the list. Uh, yeah. Roy Harper. Okay, Speedy. The original Speedy's on the list. Hawkman, Plastic Man. Uh, Hawk Girl, I already said. Wildcat. Uh, Spectre. Dr. Fate, I've already said. Um, let me think. I already said Black Canary. The Phantom Stranger. Phantom Stranger was 1950s? Holy shit. Didn't realize he was that old. I thought he was a newer character, but there's more. There's a lot more. If I were to do Marvel, I would have been done a while ago. Okay, there are over 200, nearly 300 uh heroes from this time period. Holy shit. Let's see. I'm going through the list for ones that yeah. Johnny B. Quick. I don't know if people would know who that is. Miss America, Miss Zatara? Zatara is Golden Age. Holy shit. Red Tornado. I knew Red Tornado was Golden Age. One day I've mentioned Joker. It's also the first appearance of Lex Luthor. Is in the Golden Age. Ultra Humanite is Golden Age. Holy shit. Solomon Grundy. I figured he would be. Toyman. I mean, there's a bunch more. I'm just going over the like kind of big names that stand out to me. Oh, that's right. Huh? Red Torpedo. I knew about Red Torpedo. The Tarantula, the Penguin, Jimmy Olsen, Plastic Man. I already mentioned. Midnight was one. Catwoman I've mentioned. Hercules, because DC had a version of Hercules as well. Uh, Mr. Mxyzptlk, Huntress. Uh, God, like I said, the Wizard, who I know the Wizard is, but jeez Louise, Doctor Fate, yes. Question is Silver Age. I know Question Silver Age. He was them getting kind of back to the actual. Uh, I mean, Lady Blackhawk, Black Condor, Blackhawk. Which was the Blackhawks comic book, which was a cool war comic that was about a fighter pilot squadron. Really cool. But geez, Louise, there. Like I said, I'm looking at this, and there's over 200. There's 285 285 characters came from that, and the ones I know most of these names. Then again, I'm a massive DC Comics fan, so that's not surprising. Yeah, Fate was definitely on the list. The Question, I'm actually gonna look that up because the Question is a really cool character. There have been a couple of different ones. There is the Question who most people think which is who is Charles Victor Sass, and then there's the current, also known as Victor Sage, Victor Vic Sage. Um, but the current question is Renee Montoya, and she is basically the law on the Justice League Watchtower. And she was created, and the first appearance of the question was in 1967. Dr. Fate is Golden Age. Yeah, he's like one of the original mystic heroes. Zatara kind of surprised me that she was Golden Age. I figured her for Silver. Uh, but, which means Batgirl Silver Age. Wow, Barbara Gordon Silver Age. I did not realize that. Funnily enough, Ace the Bat Hound is Golden Age. Ace the Bat Hound is older than anyone on this in this picture except for Batman and Robin, Batman, Nightwing, and Catwoman. Ace the Bat Hound. Which, by the way, I love how they've got Ace in a mask. It makes me smile, the fact they give Ace a mask. It's brilliant. But while we've got this photo here, we'll go over some of the other characters. Okay. We have, of course, Batman, Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, the original Robin, later on Nightwing, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, Oracle, then Batgirl again. Jason Todd, second Robin, later on gets killed by the Joker. Actually, he gets killed by the DC Comics fans. More on that later. And then comes back when he's resurrected. He becomes Red Hood. Alfred Pennyworth, who is without a doubt one of the biggest badasses in that picture. Unfortunately, right now, Alfred is dead. Kate Kane, Batwoman, Bruce's cousin, and one of my, and also a really cool character, based off a, funnily enough, Golden Age character. However, that Kate Kane was very different from this Kate Kane. So, the current Robin, Damian Wayne, Bruce's son, and Talia al Ghul's son, and Ra's al Ghul's grandson. That's absolutely terrifying. It really is. Tim Drake, the probably second greatest detective in the world, the only other superhero that Ra's al Ghul will call detective. That's kind of like his thing for Bruce. He's the detective, but he is at times called Tim Drake Detective as well. As kind of like a nod of, yeah, you're every bit as smart, you're every bit as good as Bruce at this. Ace the Bat Hound we talked about a little bit. Cassandra Cain. Technically third Batgirl, and I'll get into that later. Then she becomes Black Bat for a little while. Her current alias is then she's Orphan. Now she's Batgirl again. So, her parents are two of the most dangerous assassins in the DC universe. But she's been adopted by Bruce. In fact, let's go through Bruce's kids while we're here. Adopted, 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 biological. Might as well be adopted. Might as well be adopted. Cousin. Pain in the ass friend. Dad. Oldest son's girlfriend. When I say the Bat family, I really do mean this is a family. These guys. And it's something that's not emphasized a lot in a lot of the animated media. It's not shown a lot in a lot of different things, but when you get into like the comics, yeah, they have issues. They don't get along sometimes, but when they're all backs against the wall, they always come through for one another. They are very much a family, this group. So, Cassie was where we left off. This is spoiler Stephanie Brown, Tim's ex girlfriend, the fourth Batgirl, technically, and technically the fourth Robin, because she carries the name Robin for a little while, too. Um, then she goes back to being spoiler after a sin of everyone thinking she's dead. Really awesome, interesting character. I actually have her entire Batgirl run, which, by the way, Cassie here is the first Batgirl to ever get her own solo run. They did a DC Comics special. It was titled Batgirl. It was DC Special Batgirl for Barbara, but Barbara never had her own Batgirl run. The first Batgirl run was Cassie's. The second one was Stephanie's. I have nearly all of Stephanie's run. I need to get all of Cassie's run. I have most of the New 52 run of Batgirl because when New 52 happens, Barbara comes back as Batgirl, and that's when she gets her first solo run Batgirl. And it is chef kiss. It's wonderful. New 52 did a whole lot wrong. Did some heroes dirty. About the only ones who didn't get done dirty are Aquaman, because they actually put a kick-ass writing team on him for the first time in like 30 years. He had shit writers for 30 years by that point. And the Bat Family. We got a lot of cool stuff for the Bat Family out of New 52. So, I don't judge New 52 too harshly for the Bat Family. Superman, I judge it harshly. Wonder Woman, I definitely judge it harshly in some things. Flash, no. There are, heck, it's Flash's, the whole thing that happens with New 52, it's all Flash's fault. Flashpoint. The Flashpoint event in the Flash comic books is actually what creates the New 52, in part and also a little help from Dr. Manhattan. By the way, Watchmen, DC Comics property. Vertigo Comics is owned by DC Comics, which means Sandman, John Constantine, and Watchmen can all appear in DC Comics, no problem. In fact, John Constantine has made the leap from Vertigo into the Prime DC universe. He is a member of the Justice League Dark. He is one of the great magic users of DC Comics. Awesome character. Now, getting back to it. Then we get to Helen Bertinelli. This is Huntress. Ooh. Technically the second Batgirl. This is technically the second Batgirl because she holds the title of Batgirl for a very brief time during No Man's Land, which is when there's a bunch of shit that happens in Gotham. A whole mess of shit. Let's see. There's the War Games, Stephanie. Then there's the earthquake that completely destroys Gotham. And Gotham, after War Games, during the War Games storyline, Stephanie Brown enacts one of Batman's fail-safe plans and forgets to read the bit that says Batman required to execute. And completely lets the gangs and everything run riot throughout Gotham. And it is an absolute shit show. Then an earthquake happens and completely destroys the majority of Gotham. The U.S. government declares Gotham a no man's land. They will receive no federal funding, no help. Just so happens, though, that one of the richest billionaires in the world happens to live in Gotham, Bruce Wayne. And, by the way, he's also Batman. So, during the No Man's Land story arc, Helena temporarily takes on the guise of Batgirl, leaves that behind, becomes Huntress. Then we get to this gentleman in the back. And I'm saving him for last because he's actually the newest character to this whole group. All these other characters that have been around 10, 15 years minimum. Let me double check, because I might be wrong on this, but I think he's only like 5 or 6 years old. Oh, I take it back. He first appears. Okay, he appears as an unnamed child in 2014, so he's 11 years old. So he is, but he doesn't become the Signal. God, has it been that long since he became the Signal? I didn't think it was that long ago. But even then, he is still one of the newer members. Wow. Has it been that long? Okay, I guess. Jeez, I didn't realize it was that long ago. Um, he is one of the newer characters. His name is Duke Thomas, and he becomes a hero during an event called We Are Robin, and takes on the mantle of Robin, technically. However, he's very special in that he is the only meta-human member of the Bat family. All the others, all the others here, they're just regular, normal people. He's a meta-human, and he's been served one hell of a shit sandwich. He really has. But um, if you want to know more about him, I will absolutely do a breakdown on Duke Thomas at some time. I'll do a breakdown on any of these characters for the Bat family, at some point, because this is. Everyone says the first family of comics is the Fantastic Four. Not really. It's them. Because you had mom and dad and the eldest all there in the 1940s. Granted, Selena and Bruce don't become hot and heavy. Well, they've had a flirtation since they first met one another. But they almost did get married at one point. I'm still salty about that particular storyline, so we won't go there. Um, but, uh, yeah, Duke Thomas, he's known as the Signal, and he is the Daylight Guardian of Gotham. And I'm trying to remember his meta abilities have something to do with light. And I'm trying to remember what. He's a photokinetic. He has the ability to absorb, redistribute, and manipulate both light and darkness. Um, he has all kinds of. I'm just gonna. I'm reading it straight from here. He has cosmic perception. Um, he can see the entire known electromagnetic spectrum. He has X-ray vision, telescopic vision, and microscopic vision. Jeez. And yes, he is the only member of the Bat. And yes, he's a member of the Bat family, and he is the only one who is a metahuman. That is incredible. For Batman to go, I'll take you, and you be a meta? Shit. You're some kind of detective at that point. Because Bruce isn't exactly the most forgiving of the metahuman community. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. He's not overly fond of a lot of metas, mainly because he has to fight so many of them, I think. But that's just the Bat family. And technically, there's someone here who could be officially part of it but isn't pictured, and that's Jim Gordon. Because towards the end of about halfway through New 52, Bruce loses his memory. And, well, they need a new Batman. And freaking Jim Gordon puts on the suit. When Bruce finally gets his memory back and becomes Batman again, Jim has been getting his ass kicked by the villain of that arc. I'm not going to go too far into it because here's the truth. I want you to read the comic. I want you to read the comic. Go look out the comics and read them. There's a lot to be said there. There's a lot to be seen there. I highly recommend you read the comic. But that's New 52 Batman, by the way, and New 52 Detective Comics. Check them out. There are some awesome stories in there. But Jim Gordon becomes Batman. Once Bruce gets his memory back, he becomes Batman again. And he goes and he finds Jim. Jim's getting his ass kicked. Jim's getting... Sorry about that. My brother needs something. But Jim's been getting his ass kicked. And he jumps and lands and crushes the bat signal of all things. Looks up, goes, Jim, who died and made you Batman? And then smirks. And that's it. That was like, that's the perfect way for Bruce to come back and reclaim being Batman. And Gordon just laughs. Here's the thing. A lot of times, and I will say this, the Dark Knight trilogy is one of the biggest guilty offenders of this. A lot of times it's portrayed that, yeah, he's a good cop, but he's not too bright. Because, he interacts with Bruce Wayne all the time as one of the great contributors to Gotham, and he's always dealing with Batman. How the hell does he not know? Jim Gordon fucking knows. Gordon knows who Batman is. He just can't admit he knows. Gordon knows who the entire Bat family is. He sees Bruce hanging out with Selina Kyle and knows that Bats has a thing for her. You think this man doesn't know who Batman is? Of course he knows who Batman is. He just can't admit he knows who Batman is. Because the second he admits, oh yeah, I know who the masked vigilante who's running around Gotham kicking the shit out of criminals and trying to help us is, he has to go arrest them. He's not going to do that. He knows who Batman is. He just doesn't care who Batman is. And also, to be fair, there's some of Batman's villains who know who Batman is. They just don't care. Joker's fully aware of who Batman is. Riddler knows who Batman is. And here's why. And it was actually said in a comic book. I want to say it was one of the Brave and the Bold ones. Recently, I want to say it was one of the Brave and the Bold comics. It might have just been a normal Batman comic. I've read it. I can't remember what issue it was. I read so many comic books, sometimes I have trouble keeping them straight in my head. But someone breaks into Wayne Manor, finds the evidence of who Batman is, and then proceeds to try and sell it. And instead of Batman and the Bat family coming after him, it's every villain in Batman's rogues gallery who comes after him to stop him from selling it. Let me repeat that. All of Batman's enemies come after this guy who has the identity of Batman in his hand and go, no, no, no. We're going to kill you rather than let you sell that. And it's said by Two-Face, why? We don't care who Batman is. We don't. Who Batman is when he's not inside the cowl does not matter. But the last thing we want is Batman without that identity. Because the second that identity gets taken from Batman, all brakes are off. That is the thing holding Batman back. That is what's keeping him human. We all know it. Quite a few of us know who Batman is, but we don't do shit about it. Because if he loses his civilian persona and becomes Batman full time, he will be an unstoppable force, and we know it. Now, to be fair, Batman does save the guy and then tells him, get out of town for your own good. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not. You want to tell people, you tell people. But for your own safety, you should get out of town, because while I may not do anything, the criminal underworld's a different story. Because that's the rule the Rogues Gallery, the Bruce's Rogues Gallery have. If one of us finds out who the bad is, we don't say shit. We don't hint we know. We don't do anything, because the second he loses that, we're all in such massive amounts of shit. Because here's the truth. You reveal Batman's identity. Nightwing, Robin, Red Robin, which is Tim Drake right now. Tim Drake, by the way, isn't yes, he's wearing a Robin uniform here, but they're calling him Red Robin. Yum! There, joke's done. Orphan, Red Hood, and even Duke, Signal, all of their identities are out in the open then. Because it doesn't take much to figure out, well, Bruce Wayne's Batman, then Nightwing's Dick Grayson, Jason Todd's Red Hood, Tim Drake's Robin, Tim Drake's Red Robin, Damian's Robin, and Duke Thomas is Signal, because Duke Thomas is hanging around Bruce Wayne too, and Cassandra Cain is Bruce's adopted daughter. Well, hell, we all know who their enemies are. And while the low-level thugs may be like, oh, yeah, we can deal with the bats now, the high-level guys are like, oh, hell no, they'll come after us with an unholy terror of vengeance. So, no, the last thing any of Batman's villains want is his identity revealed. Now, which, funnily enough, is the same thing with Superman. Lex Luthor doesn't give a flying crap most of the time, depending on who the writer is. A lot of times, Lex doesn't care who Superman is, who he is when he's not in the cape, because he knows if he becomes Superman full time, Lex's life is going to get a lot harder. A lot harder. So, no, let him keep his little secret identity and everything, and we will be happy. They don't want to know. None of them want to know who those two characters are, because all their big bad guys go, as long as they've got that civilian identity, we got a little wiggle room. The second they lose it, it's going to be an unholy shit show for us. So yeah, uh, I was gonna do a more general overview, but I kind of get sidetracked. Here's my problem with talking about comics. I need to be focused because I will go off on tangents like I am tonight. Um, I could talk about DC Comics a lot. I absolutely love comic books in general, DC especially. I could talk a lot about Marvel too. My Marvel knowledge isn't quite as strong as my DC knowledge. Uh, Mainly because when I was younger, I mainly read DC. My first couple of comics I got, my first comic book ever was Batman and a I got a Batman comic and a Wolverine comic. Those were two of my first comics, and then I eventually got a Nick Fury book, which that character I just really, and then later Spider Man, and those were the ones I mainly read in Marvel. I wasn't like a big team up or anything with that, but in DC I read Batman, Robin, Nightwing, Catwoman, Superman, uh, numerous Superman titles, Supergirl. I've, I've read Green Arrow from time to time. I've read Green Lantern from time to time. Kyle Rayner is one of my favorite Green Lanterns. Um, Wonder Woman, I'll tell you what, one of the best Wonder Woman runs ever is the one started by George Perez back in the 80s. That was chef kiss good. It was absolutely a wonderful run. I highly recommend it because, wow, that was a good story. That was good storytelling and amazing artwork. Teen Titans, I just kind of ran the gamut of DC Comics. Marvel, I was always a bit more selective, and I still am. I still am today. I work part time at a comic shop, and my comics there, I'm selective on which Marvel ones I read. DC, my DC list puts my Marvel list to shame. In all honesty, because and this is my opinion. I will fully admit it's my opinion. I think right now, comic book wise, DC has better writing teams. DC has better art, and DC has better overall stories than Marvel at the moment. Uh, I enjoy the writing of DC, and part of that could be because of who DC's current editor in chief is. Um, uh, who is. Make sure it's the same guy, because I think it is. Oh, Jay Evans is it? I thought it was someone else. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He's the president and publisher and chief uh, creative officer. I'm sorry. He's not the editor in chief. He's their boss. And that is Jim Lee. Who, if you don't know who Jim Lee is, either you're too young to remember, or you're either too young to remember, or you didn't read comics back in the 90s. You're either too young or you didn't read them in the 90s to, I think, what, 2010? Yeah. Then you weren't big into comics in that point. Oh, cool. I was just talking about how uh, DC, I think, right now has a better writing team and a better art team. And part of that is because I thought he was editor in chief, but it turns out he's president, publisher, and chief creative officer of DC Comics, Jim Lee. I was saying, if you don't know who Jim Lee is, you either weren't big into comics in the 90s or you're too young to have read them. Because he was all over the place in the 90s. He did some amazing work on Batman and other things like cover art and the like. And he got involved in the industry, I think, back in the 80s. Was it 87 or something like that? That's Yeah. He started working at Marvel, and he actually did the first issue of X-Men. Then that 90s relaunch of X-Men, he did the artwork for it, which is that 90s relaunch of X-Men is where, yeah, I know you were born in 98, you're a baby, I get it. But Jim Lee did the 1990 relaunch of X-Men that was later on used in the 90s X-Men animated series. That art style was copied and used in that. That's all Jim Lee art. That's what the basis of that is. And then in 1992, he's like, you know what? I'm going to go do something different. I'm going to go help create Image Comics. Now, for those of you who don't know, Image is listed as an indie, but they're really not anymore. Given the popularity of characters like Spawn and Invincible and The Boys. And, well, no, not The Boys. The Boys was an Image. Was it? Was it? Invincible, Walking Dead, Kick-Ass. No, not The Boys. I didn't think so. But, yeah. Saga, Savage Dragon, Jupiter's Legacy. These are all Image Comics titles, and that company started in 1992. And of course, Witchblade. Just so you know, I'm a huge Witchblade fan. I absolutely love that series. It is awesome, and the current reboot of it is just an amazing update to the story. If you haven't checked it out and you're a comic books fan and you want something that's not DC or Marvel, anything from Image I can almost say is go read it. It's good. I think The Boys is dynamite though. But Image is different because Image any okay, Marvel, DC, you create a character, you basically sell the character to DC and Marvel. They have the rights to it. Image is creator-owned comics, meaning if you create the character, that's your character. You have all the rights, which is why Todd McFarlane created his own freaking toy company so that he could keep the toy rights and make all the money from the Spawn toys. The man is very smart. The only company in the world that can make Spawn toys is McFarlane Toys, and that is owned by Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn. He created his own toy company just so he could make and have final say on all Spawn action figures. Okay, so I'm getting off topic just because, again, I love comic books. But Jim Lee basically did so many great things. He published titles like Wildcats and Gen 13, which, if you don't know them, they're awesome. He actually brought Wildcats to DC, and he sold Wildstorm, his own publishing company, his own studio. He sold it to DC and ran it as a DC imprint until 2010. He also did a lot of really cool work, like the Hush storyline, Superman for Tomorrow, Superman Unchained. He worked on the New 52 run of Justice League. I mean, the dude has done a lot of stuff. He is without a doubt one of my favorite comic book artists. And when I read Marvel a lot, when I got into Marvel, it was back in the 90s. I'm nearly 40 years old. I was reading Marvel back then. And so what I view as good comic book art is that Jim Lee era of X-Men. That was like, that Jim Lee era, I really like that. That's good because they took the inspiration for that Jim Lee era of X-Men and used it in what was Marvel's most popular cartoon at the time, which was X-Men, the animated series. And that was based entirely on Jim Lee's art. That is just. He is without doubt one of my favorite 90s artists. And then he comes over and does work at DC for a while, does some absolutely amazing work on DC. He goes off, creates Image Comics, and now he's the guy in charge of DC. He's not just, the editor in chief. He's the president, publisher, and chief creative officer of DC Comics right now. Holy shit. No wonder I like where DC's going. One of my favorite artists of all time is running the place. Because when I think of comic book art, I loved the 90s X-Men. Yeah, I was big into, I was a big DC guy. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman as I got older. I got into Wonder Woman when I got older, but those characters, I was like, oh, these are awesome characters. I love these characters. They're really good. But then there was that 90s X-Men run, and I always every now and then I would pick one of these books up, just because the art was always so good. It would catch your eye, and you would just be like, wow, that is cool. And not to mention the fact that in 1992, they launched X-Men, the animated series, based off that art. And it was awesome. It really was. So that's probably why I look at DC now and I'm like, wow, this art's really good. Because the guy who's approving everything's the guy who really influenced my opinion of what's cool comic book art. Okay. I mean, he has done some really kind of iconic. He's done a lot of really kind of iconic Batman covers and everything. He worked with Jeff Loeb on the Hush storyline in 2003. That I actually knew about because one of my all-time favorite Batman covers happened then. Um, Let me see if I can find it. There's a couple of really awesome Jim Lee Hush covers. They're just like absolutely fantastic. Um, and I'm trying to find one in particular. I don't remember what it is. He also worked on the first issue of Batman Gotham Knights. What the hell? Okay, now I know why I like the All-Star Batman and Robin art, even if I hate Frank Miller's take on Batman. Uh, but whoa. Okay. I get why I love that art now, because he worked on that. That's cool. I didn't actually know he worked on that. That's the thing. There's so much to know about comic books, because the superhero comic really comes into being with Superman in 1938, 37. I want to say 37. June 1938. Okay, so 1938. So Batman's only a year younger than Superman. I thought it was two. But 1938 to now, that's the real history of all the superhero comics. And Batman's been around for all but one of those years. The year before that, it's Superman. And then you get 1938 is Superman, 1939 is Batman. So they've been around pretty. So Batman and Superman, they've both been around pretty much since the dawn of the superhero comic. Superman being first, followed by Batman. And when you think about that, the amount of history these characters have is just absolutely mind blowing. I personally absolutely love DC Comics. It was now and will forever be my favorite comic book company. I know. My nickname's Fury. How can you say that with everyone calling you Fury? I get called Fury because I was looking for a Nick Fury comic book. One of my best friend, who happens to own my local comic shop, by the way. We weren't best friends when I first walked in, but I walk in, and I'm asking for Nick Fury books, and he's as after I leave, he's like, I can't remember that guy's name. I'm just gonna call him Fury from now on. That is how my nickname Fury came to be. By the way, folks, my good one of my very dear friends, probably my best friend, gave it to me. Um, and that's 12 years ago now. Yeah, 12 years ago. 12 years ago this month, actually. Wow. Uh, so that is where my name comes from because I was actually looking for Secret Warriors, which is a Nick Fury storyline, uh, and it's also where they introduced the character Quake, or uh, um, and a few others. It is a really, really good story. I highly recommend that one from Marvel. There's quite a few Marvel stories I'll highly recommend. Anything to do with Spider-Man, read, because Spidey has been there for everything. Spidey's Spidey's the guy. Uh, but uh, as much as I love certain characters in Marvel, I love Spider-Man. I love Wolverine, Nick Fury. Sometimes Cap when they're not making him a pain in the ass. Tony's hit or miss. Thor's hit or miss. But sometimes they're really good books. So I always pick up the first book of every new series to see what it's like. Never been big on Daredevil, which is funny because he's Catholic and so am I. But if you want to know if I'm going to go pick up a comic, and I have a choice between Batman and Iron Man, picking up the Batman book. Uh, 9 times out of 10, it's only if it's like a specific storyline that I don't have, and I really want it, is the Demon in the Bottle storyline of. Are you back? How are you, sir? Hello, Alex. I'm talking comics tonight. I've been going on and on about comics tonight. Rambling is a good word for it. Um, but one of the stories I've always been looking for is like, oh, good. For those who don't know, Alex has been Alex is working on a new tabletop RPG called Spell Sword. He has been working on the economics and equipment chapter for 2 months, and he had to get that finished before we could get back to testing everything, because we're at the point now where we're testing stuff, and every now and then we'll be like, well, shit, we need this fixed before we can continue testing. So we've been testing a little bit, but we. Yeah, but hey, at least it's done, and I will bring you Stormfront tomorrow night so you can read it, so you can finish it. Awesome storyline. For those who don't know, I have gotten Alex here, Alex the Moose, to read the first Dresden Files novel. Unfortunately, the library copy he bought, he got from the copy he got from the library was missing the last few pages from the story, so I'm letting him borrow my copy to finish it. Um, but with what you read, how have you liked it? Do you see why I said you needed to read this? I mean, I love Dresden Files. It's one of my favorite book series. That was like I said. Anytime you brought up enchantments and the like, I'd be like, you. What was I said? You need to read the Dresden Files because that is exactly how he does it in that book. And I was like, holy hell. Yep, yep. So he just finished. He's pretty much finished Stormfront. I think you have like 10, 15 pages left to read there. But I'm going to get back to what we were talking about here, which is if I had to pick between Batman and Iron Man, I'm almost always going to pick Batman. Yeah, exactly. There's a tabletop RPG for Dresden Files. Uh, unless it's like the Demon in the Bottle storyline or Armor Wars. Those are two Iron Man stories that I absolutely love. Okay, which Conan? Marvel Conan, Pulp Conan, or the current Conan? Which would you prefer? Or even the Dark Horse Conan, because Dark Horse Comics published Conan for a while there. And yes, I know how much of a nerd I am knowing all this. Although I will have to say, some of the early Marvel Conan is really good stuff. Again, I've never been a big Conan guy myself, but I can see why it's so attractive to some people. There's just such tight storytelling in a lot of the Conan stories, especially when you get to like the older ones, where it's the old pulp fiction because that's how Conan started off. It was a pulp fiction uh, that showed up in magazines and the like, and it was really good. No, I didn't. I missed it. I have to. Okay, I'm also an anime fan too. Uh, Gundam Wing is one of my favorite animes, and I have not had the opportunity to sit down and watch the panel, and I need to. Howard, by the way, is the guy who created Conan, and he just that entire Chimerian age is incredible. It's like supposed to be a lost age of history. Really? Oh, I need to watch that then. Oh, and recently I was telling the stream just a little bit ago. I I was saying how much I'm really enjoying like DC Comics these days because the art and the storylines and everything. And I thought it was because of who the editor in chief was. No, It's because of who the president, publisher, and chief creative officer is. The guy who runs the whole show is Jim Lee, and he has done some of the most influential work in 90s comics, like the 90s X-Men animated series is based off his comic book work. And he created he was one of the co-creators of Image Comics and a bunch of other stuff. I was like, okay, I knew he worked at Image. I didn't know he helped found the damn thing. But with him running DC now, I can see why, with that transition back to that type of art, I'm like, this is what defined me as a comic book fan for years, is his art. Because that X-Men series, I watched it every Saturday morning. I never missed it. I actually kind of miss it. But I have been ranting and raving about comic books for nearly an hour and a half now. Mainly about, thank you very much. Oh, if you're watching this, please check out the Discord link. It is in my profile. I hope you enjoy. It's an hour long. That's not a problem. Not a problem at all. But I highly recommend a bunch of these storylines. And I was actually going on. I was originally going to talk in general about the Bat family, but I ended up just doing a ramble about a base history of the superhero comic in some places. Mainly about how DC is the original superhero comic, and that, Batman and Superman have been there from pretty much the dawn of the superhero comic. Superman being the first one, and Batman coming out a year later. So, and going on about how when you compare the heroes and characters from DC Comics to the heroes and characters from Marvel, you will see a lot of the DC characters are a lot older than the Marvel characters. Most of the famous Marvel characters came around in the 1960s. Most of the really famous DC ones are from the 1940s. With two of the most famous being from the 1930s. Granted, it was at the end of the 30s, but it was still the 1930s. And technically, Mr. Terrific is a Golden Age hero. It's not the Mr. Terrific we see today, it's his predecessor. Because Mr. Terrific is one of those mantles that has been passed on, like Green Lantern, like the Flash, like from time to time Batman, like from time to time Superman. John Kent was Superman for a while. But the current Mr. Terrific is actually Mr. Terrific 2, the second one. But the original Mr. Terrific was originally a Golden Age hero, and I found that out. I was like, holy hell, I thought he was like Silver or Bronze Age at the earliest. Yes. When Clark leaves, it's spelled Jon because it's short for Jonathan. When Superman leaves Earth to go fight, I think it was on Warworld. It's been a minute since I read it. John has come back to Earth, and his aging's been accelerated, and he becomes Superman for a while. During that time period, he comes out, and that's where they do the whole. That's where news cycles got. Superman is now gay. It was and it wasn't. Okay. Clark Kent is not. John Kent, his son, is. But At that point, John Kent was Superman. And uh, funnily enough, John Kent's best friend is Damian Wayne, Robin. They actually had a really cool run together that was called Super Sons, and they actually did two. They did Super Sons and Adventures of the Super Sons, and they actually have this big, thick omnibus that's the uh, it's all the Adventures of the Super Sons, and it's about that thick. And it's at the comic shop I work at right now, and every time I look at it, I'm like, I kind of want that, but then I remember it's $125, and I can't justify spending that on one book. Usually, unless it's Nightfall. Nightfall, I can justify it. If it's the Nightfall, if it's the hardcover Nightfall story, I can justify it. I can't justify it for Super Sons. But Nightfall, that is like the. Okay, there's some definitive works of Batman. The Long Halloween. Hush. Long Halloween, Hush. I, any of the crises, actually, because he always plays a big part in those. And Nightfall. Where, okay, Nightfall is the storyline where Bane breaks the bat. And Nightfall is also one of the reasons I have such a hate for how they portray Bane so much of the time. Most of the time we see Bane, he is this big, hulking brute and not very intelligent. That is not who Bane is in the comic books. Bane is a tactician on par with Batman. He is brilliant, he is dangerous, and he figures, and most dangerously, he's the one villain who cares who Batman is and isn't afraid to use that identity against him. Because he figures out during Nightfall, at the beginning of it, he breaks everyone out of Arkham and Blackgate, and Batman runs around the city for for days, no sleep, just locking up Poison Ivy, Riddler, Joker, all of them. He comes back home, gets back to the cave, comes up to the cave. He's still in his suit, by the way. That's how tired he is. Goes up from the cave behind the grandfather clock into the study at Wayne Manor, and standing in Wayne Manor, not even standing in the Batcave, but standing in Wayne Manor, is Bane, and their fight starts at Wayne Manor. He breaks Batman's back in Gotham City, drags him back to Gotham so everyone can see him break the bat. But Bane is without a doubt one of Bruce's most dangerous enemies. I'd put him up there with Ra's al Ghul and Joker as some of Bruce as one of he's in the top 3 of Bruce's most dangerous enemies. When we're talking about Batman's villains, you put Bane near the top of how dangerous, always, because if you don't put Bane there, then you haven't read who Bane is in the comics. Like I said, the closest we've come to a live action Bane that was good was Tom Hardy's Bane in the Dark Knight trilogy. I have so many issues with the Dark Knight trilogy. Don't get me wrong, they're good movies. They're enjoyable movies. But come on, we see very little of Bruce being the detective. They're mainly superhero romps, and we have to be grounded. You cannot properly do Batman and be grounded. And I'm pulling this, and I heard this first described from a guy, Panda Red, on TikTok and YouTube. He is one of my favorite creators for comic book content on the internet. I absolutely love his stuff, and he said it best. You can't do Batman grounded, real gritty and grounded, because there's a certain element of silliness to Batman. Maybe not to the level of like the Adam West Batman, but take if you were to take like the Batman movie, the Dark Knight trilogy, and then the Adam West and have them kind of meet in the middle somewhere, a little more closer to like the to Batman 89, but even then 89's a little too dark and a little too serious. There needs to be that tiny element, that allowing for some silliness. Because let's be blunt, let's look at Batman's villains, shall we? And I'm gonna remove Two Face from this. You have a guy who is literally dressed up as a clown, who may or may not have been a gangster before his injuries. You have a billionaire, or one when he was created, a millionaire who is short and looks like a penguin. So much so he wears a top hat, a monocle, long. Okay, I'm not gonna get into Cape Crusader. And wears a tuxedo all the time to just emphasize how penguin-like he is. You have the Riddler. I'm not even going, whose name is Edward Nygma, Enigma, Mystery. That's actually one of the best things that came out of Batman Forever. Shit all you want on Batman and Robin, and shit on those costumes. Val Kilmer is the worst Batman ever, and I'm sorry to say that. I think Val Kilmer was a brilliant actor. I love him. I've loved him in so many things. He was a bad Batman, though. And I feel bad saying it, but he is not the worst offense in that movie. The worst offense in that movie, and I will die on this hill. This is something you will not get me ever to recant this statement. Jim Carrey is the worst Riddler they could ever have cast. Now, if you were going to cast the Joker, hey, he'd have been a great Joker. He is a terrible Riddler. He's awful. Nygma isn't that bombastic. He can be from time to time, but he is more calculated. Oh yeah, that and if you bear in mind this recently, like within the past couple of years, there's a in the comic books they had a war breakout, and it was called the War of Riddles and Jokes. Joker versus the Riddler across Gotham. Those two hate one another. But Riddler's thing is, I'm the smartest person in Gotham. Except he isn't. Batman's smarter than him. Hell, Dick, Tim, and Jason are all smarter than him. Barbara Gordon definitely is. I mean, Barbara's intellect's probably near on par with Bruce's. She's not far from him. And just because of her, and she proves that just as her time as Oracle, let alone her time as Batgirl. But he believes he is the smartest person in Gotham. He isn't. But, and this is, again, he's one of the villains who were 100%, they've never 100% confirmed it, but we're pretty sure he knows who Batman is, but just doesn't give a shit. Bane's a better tactician. I wouldn't say intellectually smarter. He's a far better tactical thinker, though. If you're taking strategic and tactical thinking, Bane's got him beat. No questions asked. If you're talking pure intellect, Riddler's smarter. If you're talking pure intellect. But, and here's, okay, my favorite Batman to date has been Ben Affleck's Batman. And yes, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for being a Batfleck supporter. I know that. That's true. He isn't. He isn't about playing games or anything. He is there. Yes, I know. Batfleck. Yeah, I know. But because, and this is again one of the great injustices done in movies about Batman. Until the introduction of the character Lucius Fox, and I believe Lucius Fox is introduced in the 70s or 80s, so we've got like 30 or 40 years of Batman history before that. Um, all of Wayne Enterprises' technology comes from Batman's mind. Bruce is absolutely it's like Ben Affleck's Daredevil. He's absolutely wonderful in that movie. The writing's where it falls. They did absolutely. That's why I like him. I feel like Ben Affleck plays Batman well, and he plays uh, Bruce Wayne well, and I'll get onto that in a minute. But like I said, it's one of the great injustices we see in comic book movies is, what's your superpower again? I'm rich. No. Bruce's superpower is the fact he is one of the few existing omnibus geniuses. Now, here's the thing about geniuses. Most geniuses are good at one particular type of work. Albert Einstein, brilliant theoretical physicist. Crap at just about anything else. Bunch of others, really good at that. Don't ask them about literature, don't ask them about history, don't ask them about anything else or any other type of scientific field but the one they're focused in. Omnibus geniuses are those few people who are good at everything, and Bruce in the comics is an omnibus genius. That's true. But omnibus geniuses, like I said, are extremely rare. I mean, geniuses are rare. Exactly, the Renaissance men. The Renaissance men were all omnibus geniuses. Leonardo da Vinci, all those guys, Da Vinci especially, more so than the others, was an omnibus genius. Bruce is one of them. Bruce speaks multiple languages, is an expert in multiple martial arts, is a master in multiple martial arts, is an expert in technology, criminology, psychology. Bruce, before he put on the cowl, went to the FBI Academy at Quantico and was going to become an FBI agent. Exactly. Now, to be fair, Kryptonians, if said point blank, are more intellectually evolved than humans. That's one of the reasons Superman is so smart. He's not human. He's raised as human, but his physiology isn't human. Because of that physiology, it gives him an edge. It gives him an edge. But that's one of the reasons Bruce can stand next to Clark as an equal, maybe not in strength, but in intellect, because in some ways, Bruce is a little smarter than Superman. About the only place where Superman's a little bit better than Batman's probably medical sciences. Bruce has a tendency for some reason to stay away from medicine. Probably because of his father. Oh yeah. If you want to there's this really that is an awesome Batfleck line. It really is. But if you want to see a bit where in the comics they absolutely are talking about how what they think of one another, there's this comic, and it's right before the double date issue, right before the wedding issue, about a year before the wedding issue, they did this double date issue where Lois Lane and Superman and Catwoman and Batman go on a double date. Well, the issue right before that, they're investigating the same thing, and Lois and Superman are going to this tower, and so are Selina and Batman. And the whole time there, it intercuts between Batman and Selina and Lois and Superman, and they're talking about what Clark saying what he thinks of Batman and who he is, and Batman saying what he thinks of Superman and what he thinks of him. Yes, they are absolutely going. This guy is everything that's. This is. They both think the other is everything a hero should be. And they each see. And because of that, here's the truth. Everyone's. They are both extremely humble individuals in who they are. Bruce is very humble when he's not being Brucey. Brucey's what we call him when he's off being the playboy billionaire philanthropist with multiple degrees. Uh, sound familiar? Gee, I wonder who Tony Stark's based off of. And Clark's obviously, Clark Kent, farm boy from Kansas, grew up humble. So, yeah, I'm gonna take away the suit, and what's left of Bruce, playboy, billionaire, philanthropist, martial artist, criminologist, psychologist, expert in computer test sciences, engineer. I could go on. They actually did that whole thing. There's a meme of it out somewhere. And it just lists all the things Bruce does. And you go, well, shit. Yeah. Well, unless you would count the Hellbat armor. Most people don't know this, but Batman has an armor that would allow him to go toe to toe with Darkseid, one of the greatest enemies of the DC universe. Exactly, very true. But if you look at what do you call it, DC, Batman does have a suit that allows him. It is a proper armor suit that allows him to go toe to toe with Darkseid. It unfortunately does have a little bit of a downside. If he wears it too long, it'll kill him. Because the energy source for this armor, which by the way is called the Hellbat armor, oh yeah, the Batman, which by the way, Batman Beyond is its own separate timeline in the DC Comics continuity. It is an alternate reality timeline that they actually occasionally interact with, which is just awesome to me. And by the way, Dick Grayson basically becomes Nick Fury in that universe. I'm not kidding. He becomes this old spy with a missing eye. The, dead serious. That happens in that universe. Because I actually I think I still have it, the Batman Beyond comic where they finally meet up with Dick Grayson. And he's missing an eye. I think he's missing his right eye instead of his left. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a spy and this and that." I'm like, "Okay, so we're just letting Dick Grayson rip off Nick Fury now?" Yeah. Okay, Batman Beyond I have issues with. I don't get me wrong, it's good, but I have issues with it. Um I for one thing, Bruce is never going to be the what Bruce becomes in that the old man alone in his uh in his mansion. His sons are never going to let that happen. Never in a million years is that going to happen to Bruce because his boys won't let it. Because every time they fall out, those boys bludgeon through are every bit as stubborn as Bruce, and they always find a way to get him back to who he is. And they show that again recently in the failsafe storyline, in the absolute power storyline, when the Justice League is disbanded at one point. The Justice League disbands, and they say there still needs to be a superhero team, and they go to Dick Grayson and say, "You're the leader of the new superhero team that's going to protect Earth while the Justice League gets its shit together." And at the end of that, uh, Batman just says, "I'm very proud of you, son." And it's one of the few times Dick actually calls Bruce dad. That's a good point. That's that's part of what you're supposed to look like as Batman Beyond, though. You have to incite fear in the cowardly criminals. Superstitious and cowardly. Exactly. I'm Batman. Which, okay, All Star Batman. I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of Frank Miller's Batman. And this is mainly why. This one thing alone. I'm the damn Batman. Actually, I probably wouldn't get in trouble for it because it's actually a quote. I'm the goddamn Batman. That's how he says it throughout that whole series. He leaves Dick Grayson alone in the cave to eat rats, lights a bunch of guys on fire, and then proceeds to bang Black Canary on the docks while they're burning. That's Frank Miller's Batman. In a nutshell, what I have just described to you are all things that happen in the Frank Miller All Star Batman and Robin run. Like I said, awesome artwork in that run. Not too fond of the story. All right, night, man. I'm actually probably going to be logging off soon, too. Uh, in fact, I think I will. I think that's where I'm going to call it because I could keep going and going and going on and on and on about comic books. But I think I'll call it a night for tonight. Um, Thank you guys for coming with me and joining me on this little journey into comic book history. Um, I hope anyone who watches this later, I hope somehow I've inspired you to pick up a comic. Because I'm a big proponent in what comics are as a reading medium, as an entertainment medium. I think they are wonderful. I think you can tell some of the best storylines around. I think there are some amazing stories in comic books, not just in DC, but in Marvel, in Image Comics, in Dark Horse Comics, Dynamite, and so many of the other publishers that have done comics have done such amazing storylines. If you like science fiction, if you like superheroes, if you like fantasy, there's probably a comic book out there that's going to catch your attention no, it may not be one of the big two, DC or Marvel, but one of the minor publishers might have something you're interested in. I'm going to keep talking about comics, though, probably off and on throughout the next while, because, in all honesty, I need a break from gaming a little bit, and I want to talk. This one, I've just been going off on a tangent here and there. I'll probably have something a bit more planned out next time. But I will call it here tonight. Thank you for joining me for my absolutely unhinged take, bit more on Batman than anything else, but on DC Comics in general. Um, and a little bit of the history of it. And just here's the truth: everything I've gone into tonight is just my opinion. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me ramble. I hope those who watch it later enjoy listening to me ramble. And I will be posting this in some of my other accounts. But until then, good night, everyone. I hope to see you again. And in the words of Commander Shepard, I should go.